In this video, I'm going to show you how to query for a single document in a Mongo database using Go. I wrote this post, so this post here about a while ago actually, and I wrote it because I found some of the use of Mongo wasn't totally clear in the Go docs. So just to give you another perspective and to see an actual example of using it, I wrote this one up. If you're just here to copy and paste, I've included a link to this tutorial in the description below, and you can just use that as a reference point and copy and paste from there. If you're interested in seeing how this works, I have gone through this once, so if you need a secondary example, I have another video of going through the whole Go boilerplate code. It was about 50 minutes long, so 50 in that case, where I did a really in-depth dive of this whole Go boilerplate code. And the Go boilerplate code I'm referring to is this one here. It's just a starting point for using building a Go API using Gin. I wrote it a little bit ago just so that people can use this as a starting point for their projects, or I can use it as a starting point for these tutorials. So I'm just going to walk you through all these steps. I'm assuming a couple things. You have Go installed on your computer, so I'm using version 1.15. You have Mongo installed on your computer, it's running. And lastly, I'm going to use Mongo Compass so you can visualize the data. I'm not going to go through in a lot of depth connecting to Mongo, but I do have the code in there if you want to just use it and see how it works. So let's get started. The very first step is pretty simple. What you're going to do is you can either fork the repository. Please star the repository if you're using it. So fork it or download it. So I'm just going to download it myself. So I'm just hit download here. You're going to unzip that file and put it into any sort of workspace that you're working with. I'm going to put it right on my desktop. I'm not going to be using Git for this project, this tutorial, so there won't be any Git related stuff. And then you're going to open it up in your favorite editor. Okay, so I've copied all that into a folder on my desktop called Query Doc. I'm going to use Golang as my editor. Again, any editor works. I like Golang, so I'm going to use this one. If you want to try Golang, feel free to head over to their website. I'm going to open up Query Doc here. It's going to open up the whole project. Again, I've gone through all this. DB file, you can see us create a connection to the local host 27017. You can go into your main.go, and so there's this project is essentially a starting point where it has sign up, sign in, log out, and it's just a basic CRUD app. So update, delete, get, list, and create. So it has all those built in. So we're gonna use that as our code base. So what we're looking at today is repositories, and we're gonna head into cars underscore repository. So here's list. We don't want list, we want the get. And so what happens here is we pass in an email. So this is because there's an authentication aspect to this. We pass in an email and a car ID. So we've specified the car ID. And we take that and we convert it to be a primitive object type. I'll show you why in a second. We build a filter off that, and then we just do a reference to our Mongo client. So I just reference this db.go, this Mongo client, and then it's dot collection, and then you pass the collection name in, and we're just going to do find one. We pass in the context and the filter, and then we map the output of that query onto this struct here, which is car, and then we just simply return it. It's fairly straightforward. We're going to be using a save because I have to show you an example of this as well. So we're just going to get this up and running. So it's easier for me to show you an example of this, and then we kind of talk about it more in a little more detail. So we're just going to go main.go here. I'm just going to change the database name here. So it's just DemoDB, but I'm just going to call it query1db. I'm going to hit save. Next, I'm going to head over to my terminal. I don't have a terminal open. Open up a new window. Since I said that my project was on my desktop, I'm gonna switch over to my desktop, and I think I called the project doc query doc here. To run this code, you should have to do go run main.go. If that doesn't work, you might be missing packages, but it should run first time. I'm using Go 1.15. And just like that, I'm up and running on port 8080. As you can see, there's a number of endpoints here. The first endpoint I'm gonna have to hit here is the sign up, just simply because I need an auth token in order to hit the remainder of the car ones. So I actually have these all saved. So the endpoint is HTTP localhost 8080. I'm using Postman as my REST client. It's gonna be a post request /user /signup. Header is content type, and then application JSON. I'm passing in an email and a password. I can tell you this is gonna fail because by default, the password is in plain text. I haven't added bcrypt to the project. I leave that to you. So we need to do one thing. We need to head into the sign up service. So check the services and then user. There's this is valid password. By default it's always false because you have to set up encryption. We're actually gonna bypass that, so don't actually use this. I'm gonna stop my Go API, and I'm just gonna rerun it. I just forgot to do that before. Heading back over to Postman. Okay, so we're gonna hit send now. It should work no problem. So it's signed up a new user. At this point, it's now created the database, so we can go see that before. And it's created this token. So we're gonna copy the token. I'm gonna head over to. We're gonna set up another API call. It's again another post call. This time it's to /cars/ not version, and then the headers are content type, application JSON, and then authorization bearer, and then it's gonna be that auth token. The body is a make, a model, and a year for the car. I'm just gonna hit send, and the car is created. Okay. Unfortunately, it didn't give me back an ID, so we have to go see what the ID is before we can call the get endpoint. So I'm just gonna open up my Mongo Compass. Again, Mongo Compass is a great way to visualize your data. Apparently, just decided to do an update. I'm just connecting with the default string, so no username, no password, anything like that. You can see query 1 DB here, and you can see one car, one session, one user. That all makes sense. We just did all those. So with the car here, I'm gonna just click on it here. I'm gonna copy this ID here, because it's one of the things that we need to make the get request. So copying that. So now we're gonna do the get request. So get with the car ID here. And I'm gonna paste this on the end. I need the auth token for my other request, or for my first one. So yeah, so content type sold, application JSON, authorization here, and then this get request. Gonna hit send. And as you can see, it returns back the whole car information. Okay, so I'm moving a little quick. I'm doing that on purpose because some people may find this somewhat trivial, and I'm doing so that they can get all the information they need out of this as quickly as possible. No, but now we'll kind of talk about just a little bit what's going on, how we got here. If that was too quick for you, you can also check out the written tutorial. I walk through it a little bit slower. So what was going on? So I'll start with my main.go as it's the entry point into the application. So we're calling this get endpoint here where we pass in the ID. So we do a validate auth, which is that auth token that we have to put in. We then call this get by ID. Get by ID extracts out the ID out of the URL. You saw that on the end, it's the object ID. So now this cars is a string. So we have this string object. We check the session, and then we pass it into the service. So get by ID, and it simply just calls the repository method. So we'll just skip right down. So it has an email and a car ID string. Well, the thing is, if we look at our database, just switch back there. As you can see, our database doesn't store the ID as a string. It stores it as a primitive object. So that's why the very first step we have to take here is we have to do that conversion from the car ID into the primitive object. And then we begin to build out that filter. Now, for this filter, I wanted to make sure that in this case, I was the only as you can see, I signed up. Was the only one who was able to pull my own cars. So that's why we filter by email and document ID. The follow up to this is, okay, so where do all these fields come from? That's where our models come in. So we use Go tags. Click the wrong one there. We use Go tags for this Mongo driver. 1 second, I just have to remove the commas here. So you should not have the commas there. That's a mistake on my part. It should be a space between the JSON tag and the BSON tag. Okay, so let's talk about that. This is how we map between the struct and the attribute field, and then vice versa. So if I change this to be model 2, for example, it's actually going to break through the whole app. But if I properly change it using like this refactor tool, although it's stored as model in the Mongo database, Ekin still has no issues mapping back to the model 2 because this tag says in the Mongo document this value is listed under model. So we have all these. If you watched my video on inserting data, you understand that the omit empty is because when we save the piece of data for the very first time, we don't have an ID, so we wanted to assign one for the document. Yeah, and so all it does here is it decodes the Mongo document onto the car struct, and it's that simple. The one case you might find is if the document doesn't exist, it'll technically throw an error. If you want to do this on purpose, so like maybe you want to fail gracefully, you would just add like a case where you say like, I'll show you. I don't have the exact error, but like it's like result does not exist or something like that. And you could like gracefully handle the error or whatever, but that's just an example. So this is it. That's all it is. It's pretty simple. This whole project has all the endpoints that you'll need for any sort of CRUD app. Thank you for watching this video. I come out with another one next week. Please subscribe.